Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Caring Counts. We are so excited to have Jordan from Elevation Hospice here with us today. As we all know, Caring Counts, our goal is to connect people in memory care because the more connections we have, the more support we have. Caring Counts is brought to you by Applewood Our House. Jordan, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Taylor. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to learn more about hospice. I've been working in senior care for the past year and a half now or so, and I still don't know much about hospice. So I'm really excited for today. I'm excited to learn more. And so with that,
Excited to talk it through with you. This is my
yeah.
so yeah.
Cool. So I would love to learn more about you and how and why you got started in hospice.
Yeah, so again, everybody, my name is Jordan. I am a registered nurse with Elevation Hospice. I'm our director of clinical services, so I oversee our clinical team, so the nurses and the CNAs. And I have been a nurse for a little over 8 years, graduated back in 2013, and have always kind of known that I wanted to do hospice nursing. My mom is mostly retired now, but she's a registered nurse as well, and her career was also in hospice. So growing up, I saw kind of the her come home and hear stories. Obviously, no patient names to keep HIPAA compliancy, but heard stories, and it was just obviously very meaningful work for her. So it's always just kind of been in my back burner kind of wheelhouse area. So I also have wanted to do emergency room or flight for life or some type of maybe more sexy nursing, but no, hospice, I've just definitely found it's my passion. So new grad into hospice about 8 years ago, went straight into hospice nursing. Started out with a different agency, working nights and weekends on call. And from there, I worked in night and weekend on call for probably about a year, and then got into case management and was there for probably about a year. And then started doing more admissions and float and kind of more behind the scenes stuff. Never really in management, but really just got over about 4 years, got a 5 years even, got a just a really good picture of what hospice bedside nursing was. So after that, I went and got what I always say is I went and got my hospital itch scratched. So I went and I worked at Denver Health Hospital for just a little over 6 months, which was plenty. It's really all I needed for to kind of check out the hospital. Loved it. Excellent experience. I met some amazing people, and so glad I did it. But it was also just very kind of confirming that hospice nursing is for me.
So your mom was a hospice nurse. You said that, right?
Yes.
I think that's so cool that your mom was, and now that you're in the same field. And maybe I'll move to my next question. What is hospice? Can you give me kind of a hospice 101?
Yeah. So hospice 101. Let's see. I think the best way to kind of phrase this would be hospice is a philosophy of care that's very comfort and quality of life focused. It's when a disease process gets to a point when treatment is either no longer desired or no longer possible. So I know that there's oftentimes this connotation with hospice that it's a place. My dad went into hospice and died 5 days later. So hospice isn't a place, it's a philosophy of care. And really even over the last decade or so, there's been a lot of movement in hospice that has just kind of got it into a better viewpoint, I guess I could say. There is still a connotation that it's a place to go to die, which in some cases is true. There are hospice facilities. What we do and what Elevation Hospice does is we provide care to people. And in, of course, our relationship with Applewood Our House, most of them are memory care, Alzheimer's, dementia patients. But outside of Applewood Our House, all sorts of different disease processes can lead somebody to the end of their life. So we take care of people in the last, just kind of in the last portion of their life, and try to provide as much comfort and dignity and quality of life and stuff as possible.
Right. And I haven't heard the philosophy, hospice is a philosophy kind of language. I've never heard of that before. I've always heard it, hospice is very flexible. It doesn't necessarily mean end of life, but it can in some cases and it doesn't in other cases. Do you have any stories you can share on some of those cases, some examples, if you will?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I can certainly talk, and I know we'll end up talking a little bit more about memory care and specifically Alzheimer's, but so separate from that, I mean, there are, let's see, how do we want to say this? So Medicare will look at hospice as somebody might have a life expectancy of maybe 6 months or less. That could be with a memory care, Alzheimer's patient, or cancer, Parkinson's disease, COPD, heart failure, all sorts of different things could lead somebody into qualifying for hospice care. Now, let's use cancer as an example, because that's, I think a lot of people think cancer eventually leads to hospice and end of life, which in most cases, yes, that's true. But we'll take care of cancer patients who maybe they've had a few rounds of chemo and radiation, and it has just made them so incredibly sick and miserable that they don't want to continue with that anymore. Maybe they could continue to seek that aggressive treatment and maybe come up with a eventually getting cured or in remission from cancer. But they say, you know what, it's just not worth it. I'm miserable. I would rather just stay comfortable and spend my remaining days, weeks, months, year, whatever the case, with my family comfortable. So that's kind of one side of things. The other side is people might be pursuing aggressive treatment, whether it is chemotherapy for cancer or surgeries and blood transfusions and all sorts of stuff. And there might become a point when the doctors say, you know, we've tried kind of everything and there's really nothing else we can do. So let's get you into more of a comfort focused philosophy of care, being hospice. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And I wanted to focus on the memory care side of things because I would love to know more about where does hospice and memory care intersect? Where do they meet in kind of this journey?
So I guess kind of with all disease processes that, I should say terminal disease processes, which most dementias and Alzheimer's definitely are. They're progressive. There's no cure. There are some things you can do to slow the progression. So with that being said, if let's just use Alzheimer's as the example. If a person with Alzheimer's continue on their declining trajectory, getting worse, obviously confusion is the main thing. People forgetting loved ones, and eventually kind of the way the disease process that leads them towards hospice. We look at somebody who can really not take care of themselves at all anymore. So maybe they used to be able to feed themselves and they used to be walking, but now they're maybe in a wheelchair or using a walker. If you're trying to have conversation with them, they're not really able to articulate their needs and make their needs known. So Alzheimer's is horrible. My grandmother passed away from Alzheimer's, and I think it's a very unique disease process, as families really have a lot of grief for a very long period. I mean, they've written books about grieving the loss of loved ones who are still alive. Because at a certain point, a son or a daughter is saying, boy, that's just not my dad anymore. He doesn't even recognize me. He doesn't look like himself. He doesn't act like himself. He might have behaviors that are so outside of what somebody might have been like their whole life. I mean, they might be angry and agitated and and whatever else. So yeah, like many disease processes, there comes a point when somebody's just really not able to take care of themselves, and rather than trying to slow the progression, we really just kind of change focus and start looking towards comfort focused care.
So me being I'll play the role of a family member, a primary caregiver, if you will. I'm taking care of my spouse or my mom at home. How do I know when I need to start looking at hospice? And do you see people looking at hospice too late, too early? What is that process like?
So usually the conversation starts with the primary care physician. So it might be the type of thing where, say you're living at home with your mom and you're taking care of her. It might be the type of thing where it's like, man, I'm having a really hard time even getting my mom in the car to get her to the doctor's appointment now.
Mm-hmm.
Last time I had a really hard time getting her back in the car because she was so confused and scared. So those conversations can start with the doctor. They might say, you know what, this is looking like you need some additional support. And specifically kind of what we look for in Alzheimer's is somebody, like I was saying, who can no longer communicate their needs, who's lost the function of taking care of themselves, whether it be feeding, showering, dressing themselves, and possibly falls. That's a big thing with Alzheimer's and dementias. We'll have patients who are continually having falls because of that poor safety awareness. And again, it's hopefully going to be coming from the doctor who can kind of vet the situation and say, you know what, it looks like mom's really doing poorly. She's lost 15 pounds in the last 3 months. I'd really like to talk to you about hospice care. So a lot of physicians, especially a little bit more so in the last 10 years, are getting pretty good about having those conversations. Some, however, are still not the best at having those conversations. I mean, it's never as a physician, I mean, nurses and doctors are known for treating and curing. So it does take some courage from the physician to say, you know what, let's talk about comfort focused care, and stop trying to cure this or slow this progression. So
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Can I follow up that question? It might be a similar answer, but I think it's important to talk about if my loved one is in a facility or a community, is it a similar process? I mean, the caregivers are there, and especially right now with COVID, I can't go and visit right now very often.
Right.
And so seeing that progression could be difficult for me as the POA. You know, how does that kind of process work? What have you seen for people who are in communities?
So yeah, same thing. Whether you're in a home or in a assisted living facility like a memory care, such as Applewood Our House, of course. So same thing. In the community setting, I think that they have a little bit better resourcing for knowing when it's time to look at hospice. I've worked with Applewood Our House. I'm trying to think, at least 5 years through different companies, and they're certainly, or you guys are certainly amongst the best in the Denver metro area. So you guys have a pretty, like, all the house managers have a really good hospice IQ, so they can have a pretty good idea as to say, you know what, it looks like this John or whatever is just really doing poorly, and they can also help with that conversation or talk to the doctor. Obviously, the majority of the patients living at Applewood Our House, for example, they're not necessarily going out to the doctor, and they might have a rounding physician come in.
Right.
So, I mean, really, it comes down to the relationship with the house managers, the facility staff, the caregivers, and that rounding provider to say, you know what, John's had 5 falls. He's been hospitalized 3 times. Every time he goes to the hospital, he comes back just a little bit worse. Family doesn't want him to the hospital anymore. And those are all kind of cueing points to say, let's talk about hospice care.
Gotcha. So, yeah, that makes sense. And through these Caring Counts episodes that we've been doing, I really had a kind of an epiphany moment just now around the team. The care team requires a lot of trust between obviously the family members and the care facility, if that's the case. But then when you start looking at hospice care, you're adding someone else to the team now too. And if you already have some of that trust involved in there, that those conversations can be somewhat easier, and you that adding a team member, if you will,
Yeah.
can be somewhat smooth, and you can start looking at hospice at the quote unquote correct time.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, adding a team member, or in the case of, I mean, I won't speak for all hospice agencies, but Elevation Hospice, actually a team that comes in. So there might be there's always going to be a primary nurse case manager. This is a trained hospice nurse who's coming into the facility routinely once or twice a week, taking vital signs, taking weights, checking on medications, basically just overseeing the whole care picture for this individual.
Yeah, that's
Then
great.
again, yeah, and then in the case of Elevation, we have a certified nurse's assistant who's coming in. In most cases, they're coming in every day, and they're just really working with the staff in the facilities that we're going into, just to come in and provide very specific one-on-one care. So generally, we'll help with kind of the hygiene things. We'll help with showers, and assuming we're talking about Alzheimer's and dementia, most patients are going to be incontinent of bowel and bladder at that point. So just really focusing on the hygiene, making sure that this resident is, I always say, looking, feeling, and smelling fresh. That's our goal.
Yeah,
So,
that's great.
but separate from that, and it's a little bit challenging because of the coronavirus situation, but we also have social worker, chaplain, and massage therapist. Massage therapist is pretty obvious what they do, but social worker and chaplain, I mean, yes, we focus a lot on the patient themselves, but we're also a huge support to the family. We educate them, support them through the end of life process. Kind of to go back to your question a few minutes ago on whether people pursue hospice care too soon or too late. It's unfortunate sometimes we do start taking care of somebody when they're very, very close to the end of their life. Like maybe they're now unresponsive and they just live for a few days. It's best to look at hospice sooner than later because of all of the support that you can get. To have a chaplain and a social worker to walk you through the end of life process for your mom that has Alzheimer's it can make the process go from, I mean, it's never going to be, well, I should say it's rarely a good thing. I mean, nobody wants their loved ones to pass away, but it can make it just so much more gentle, and you're so much more prepared and supported, and just through the process. So, yeah,
I'm almost hearing you say there really is no too soon, because if it's too soon, maybe they go on hospice care, or maybe then they can come off of hospice care. But they have that connection there. The family has that connection there. So when that time does come in memory care with Alzheimer's and dementia, you do have that person. That team is kind of already part of the circle.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, as far as too soon, I suppose there can be a too soon. And it's happened before. I mean, we might get a call from a family member or from a doctor and say, "Hey, can you come check on this gal who I think could qualify for hospice?" And we look at a bunch of things. Like I said, kind of the inability to make your needs known, loss of physical function, cognitive decline, weight loss, all of this stuff. And we'll take that information and we'll talk to our medical director. We've got 2 physicians that we work with, in addition to the primary care doctor. And we say, hey, this is what we're seeing. These are kind of the things that have been going on over the last 3, 6 months, year, whatever. And they might say, you know what, I think that it's not quite time for hospice. Let's maybe circle back in a couple of months and just see how they're doing. So there is a qualification process. And with Alzheimer's, it's a little bit more, let's put it this way, with heart failure, there's a very specific, like your heart has to be functioning at X% in order to qualify for hospice. With Alzheimer's, it's a little bit harder to judge. You're looking at a bunch of different stuff, functional, cognitive, all sorts of different declines, and trying to basically establish whether or not this person has this terminal disease. With the way they phrase it is, with normal disease progression, it'd be a 6-month or less prognosis. So, but to your point, yes, we have had people come on hospice and they'll stabilize, they'll get a little better, and they do graduate from hospice. So that happens as well.
Yeah, yeah, I love it's a philosophy. I think that's
Yeah.
great. So then what has been the hardest part about your job?
Nights and weekends on call? No, not really. So, people ask me that. I mean, you say you're a hospice nurse, and oh my gosh, that must be so hard. And there are components of it that's very hard. Um, and I'll get a lot of comments over the years saying like, well, how do you stay disconnected from your patients? How do you not get attached? And my answer is like, you do get attached. That's what makes you a good nurse.
Yeah,
So I mean, it is challenging to take care of somebody. I mean, you might be with somebody for 6 months, 9 months, or even a year, and you're with them 2 or 3 times a week for a year, and you're
right.
watching them go from being able to communicate, and maybe they're walking and talking, and then over that year they just go downhill to the point of eventually dying. And you do become attached, and it is sad. I mean, it's hard and it's sad. Um, it's also very very rewarding because I mean you're able to support this patient through the thing that every single living thing goes through, which is of course death, and supporting their family through the process and making it dignified and comfortable. And so I mean it's kind of a double-edged sword or a two-sided coin or whatever you want to say as far as what the hardest part of the job is and the best or the most rewarding.
Thank
um,
you. You answered my next question. My next question was what's the most rewarding? And I think you totally hit the nail on the head. So that being said, what would you like our audience to take away from your experiences as a hospice nurse?
I think the main thing is we always love opportunities like this to kind of get in front of people to explain what hospice is and what hospice isn't. And I think that the number one takeaway would just be to know that um, really just what hospice is, and that it's just such a major support to the patient and the family, and that you get all of these visits, a CNA, social worker, massage therapist, and all of these amazing this support system. Um, so I guess that would be the main takeaway is just kind of the explaining what hospice is.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Jordan, thank you so much for your time today and talking to me about hospice and where memory care and hospice intersect. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thanks so much for having me. I'd look forward to do it again.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, that being said, I wanted to let everyone know that we are having a Caring Counts event. It'll be our second annual, but first online Caring Counts event. It's starting in October 12th. It's on our Facebook page if you want to sign up and register for the Zoom links. We're actually going to have Elevation Hospice do a section on the Friday of that week. And they're going to talk all about busting the myths of hospice. And we're super excited to have them. We're going to have people all around Colorado and from the nation too. We have Tipa Snow for that event. We have the Alzheimer's Association. We have Applewood Our House presenting, and we have Jamie Sarche coming to do end of life care and things like that. So we're super excited for that event. It's called Caring Counts. It's on our Facebook page. We did have one question come in. So Jordan, I'm going to bring you back on a little bit.
Yeah.
Malou Van Eyck posted a question. How is hospice paid for?
That's an excellent question. So, with Elevation, we never charge a patient for any services. I'd say 99 out of 100 of the patients that we take care of, they have Medicare. So Medicare pays 100% for the hospice benefit. Private insurance will pay for it. We have not had the best success at billing insurance, but we generally don't turn away patients who don't have Medicare, for example. But Kaiser has a hospice program. Most insurance companies do, Medicaid and Medicare. So yeah, that's an excellent question, and it's pretty remarkable. We didn't talk too much about it. I don't know if I should keep going. I know we're kind of trying to wrap up, but
Oh, no, that's okay. The question popped in, and I always love to answer questions right on the Facebook Live here as people. So if you have a question and you're watching right now, please post it. But if you want to talk a little bit more about that, that's great.
yeah, I'll just So it's the Medicare hospice benefit. They're the primary payer source for the vast majority of hospice patients. They pay for the hospice company to come in and provide all the services, both the people that come in and medications, medical equipment, incontinence supplies. Separate from getting extra support, it can actually be a cost savings for families at some pretty often. So it's an excellent program that Medicare has figured out.
Great. Well, great. Malu, thank you so much for the question. We appreciate it. Great question. If you have any other questions, please post them in the comments. We can get those to Jordan. We can try to do our best to get you connected, because that's our goal with these caring counts. We want to connect people so they have more support with all of the wins and the struggles and the challenges and the successes, everything. So our goal is to support people. Thank you everyone for joining us for our caring counts. Thank you again to Jordan and Elevation Hospice. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. Thanks everyone.
Bye everyone. Thank you.